Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51% a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, the French medical profession dealing with a series of Me Too allegations in hospitals, including one leading female specialist levelling accusations against a male colleague. Also, it may be 2024, but a full-time working woman still makes only 88 cents for every euro or dollar earned by a man across the OECD. We'll be talking shortly to senior economist Valerie Frey on the effectiveness of pay transparency laws. And the Egyptian female rappers vying for the spotlight as they seek to pursue their careers in a highly traditional Muslim country. But first to a developing story, and New York's highest court has overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 conviction on felony sex crimes. This on the grounds of a crucial mistake by the judge in letting prosecutors introduce testimony from women who claim Weinstein assaulted them, even though they were not part of the charges he faced at the time. It will now be up to the Manhattan District Attorney to decide if there is indeed a need for a retrial. But Weinstein is not a free man, as he's serving a 16-year sentence over rape in California in connection to another case. In the meantime, here in France, the medical profession has been rocked by a series of allegations of sexual harassment and violence in hospitals. A leading infectious disease female specialist recently having made accusations against a male emergency care specialist. Since then, more women have come forward to testify, as Aurore Dupuis reports.
She shares her story for the first time to encourage others to speak up. In 2019, the young medical intern assisted a gynecologist with the examination of a patient's uterus.
At that moment, he turned to me and said, actually, he wasn't even addressing me directly. He said, "Oh, I like it when they're on their knees, plus we don't pay them much." I was like, what did he just say? Is he talking to me? Then he said, "Okay, meet me in my office at 7 p.m. I won't tell my wife, don't worry." I just said, "No thanks, I'm good." And he replied, "Oh, come on, I'm just joking." Honestly, he didn't seem bothered by it at all.
She didn't know the gynecologist very well and didn't dare to confront him.
I was very angry, very frustrated that I didn't have the response I would have liked at that moment. I felt like I had no rights against him, especially during a time when I felt vulnerable in the hospital because I wanted to make a good impression.
Could this be the start of a Me Too movement in the medical field? Last week, infectious disease doctor Karine Lacombe spoke out, accusing a well-known emergency care specialist, Patrick Pelou, whom she describes as a predator with all the signs of virility, boasting, overflowing with confidence thanks to his position of authority. They worked together at a hospital in Paris, where she says he, quote, grabbed an intern by the neck and rubbed his lower abdomen against her. Patrick Pelou strongly denies the allegations.
I was stunned to learn the rumors relayed in this article, which I strongly contest.
The case has raised questions in the medical community, with many denouncing a lewd culture. In 2021, a study revealed that nearly 50% of female medical students received sexist remarks, more than 38% experienced sexual harassment, and 5% inappropriate behavior. One union of medical interns is calling for witnesses to come forward.
It's incredible to think that in large departments where everyone is aware, I mean dozens and hundreds of people have known about this for years, yet it's still happening so openly on a daily basis. Obviously, this is something that needs to be stopped.
The French health minister is currently working with healthcare professionals to come up with a strategy to combat sexual misconduct.
Now, for the working woman, the issue of salary can indeed be a thorny point, especially as so many of us are still earning less than men who are doing the same job. Last year, a new EU directive was adopted to strengthen the principle of equal pay. The new law forcing member states to adjust their pay equality laws, boost pay transparency, along with the enforcement of equal pay. This is a full-time working woman makes only 88 cents for every euro or dollar earned by a man on average across the OECD. But do such moves actually work? Joining me now is Valerie Frey, a senior economist with the OECD who's been researching pay transparency. Valerie, thank you so much for your time. Pay transparency these days is very much a corporate buzz phrase, but in reality, there's a big difference between talking the talk and walking the walk, isn't there?
There certainly is, and it has become in many ways a buzzword. It's something we're hearing about all the time. But I'm happy to report that a lot of countries are in fact actually making very good progress on this. So there are 38 OECD member countries, and 21 of them, over half, now require private sector firms to report the gender pay gap between women and men. And that's just one aspect of pay transparency. So when we hear the word pay transparency, it's really this umbrella term referring to a range of different policy measures, including pay gap reporting, equal pay audits, salary disclosures and job advertisements, and even to an increasing degree, gender neutral or gender sensitive classifications in salary scales as well. So it is a bit of a buzzword, but it's also a policy space where we're seeing a lot of movement in OECD countries.
But how is it that we're in 2024, we've got a record number of women working these days as well as remaining in the workforce, yet we still are seeing a significant gender pay gap in so many parts of the world?
It's true, and I think this is why so many governments are really pushing pay transparency now. In a lot of ways, it's an easy win. It's very low cost for most governments. It's not a very high administrative burden for firms. And as you say, the median woman earns 88 cents to every dollar or euro earned by a man in the OECD. And this is after decades and decades of progress. So it's a really remarkably stubborn feature of labor markets and decades of public policies, interventions in schools, interventions in work-life balance supports have helped a lot, but we're sort of reaching the point where things feel quite stuck, and I think governments are very interested in trying new things. And so this idea of disclosing pay, putting the spotlight on firms that are practicing unfair pay practices is really gaining momentum.
But Valerie, it's surely not just laws and directives that are going to end gender pay discrimination. Other factors kick in as well, such as the lack of women in senior management, not to mention, of course, segregation in different types of jobs. So how does pay transparency address this part of the wage gap?
So I think it's challenging, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of a last step. So I mean, we can do a little bit, pay transparency can do a bit in terms of vertical segregation, right, where we talk about men are disproportionately represented in management roles. In a lot of countries, firms are required to report salary differences at different levels of the organization. They're required to report whether or not men are disproportionately represented as managers and as leaders of companies. So that helps a bit. But I think the big drawback to pay transparency, there are two. One is that if there's evidence of unfair pay, it's often still on a woman to address it herself, either through her company or through the judicial system. And this is a really tremendously high cost in terms of effort.
But women who report cases of discrimination need a lot of courage, don't they?
And a lot of resources. It requires a lot of time and money and emotional labor to get through that kind of a process. So that's one big barrier that I think limits the effectiveness of pay transparency. The other is that in a lot of ways this comes too late. It comes after years or decades of really gendered career choices and constraints that women have faced. And so it's kind of a last step, but we certainly need to continue to see even stronger interventions throughout the life course to make sure that women and men have equal opportunities and outcomes.
Valerie Frey, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you, Annette.
And finally, rap music is gaining a growing following in Egypt. Even more interesting, however, is the rising number of women expressing themselves through this musical genre, as Clemence Waller reports.
In the gardens of this Cairo university, 21-year-old Doreen spits her bars.
Rap gives me a space to express myself freely. There's a sense of freedom in the lyrics of rap. There's freedom overall.
The young rapper is a native of Alexandria, a city that's produced most of the country's hip-hop stars. In her latest album, Kawabes, Nightmares in Arabic, Doreen talks about the ordeals she went through following breakups. But she doesn't only rap about her personal life, she also tackles gender issues, a real problem in the patriarchal Egyptian society.
I feel that maybe they don't take us seriously, perhaps assuming that as women, we don't encounter significant challenges. However, it's quite the opposite. Women often face twice the obstacles that men do. If your problem as a guy is struggling to make ends meet, we girls are facing harassment generally in life.
Fatih is also a rapper. She says the women trying to make it on the up-and-coming scene get constant backlash from men.
We get criticized a lot. We get insulted. They make fun of us. I really hope that changes. I'm not talking about myself, but a lot of girls get affected by that criticism. They wonder why they're insulting and making fun of us.
Like many other sectors in Egypt, the rap scene is still very male-dominated. Doreen and Fatih are some of the pioneers taking down the status quo and fighting for a piece of the action.
And that's all for this edition, but in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you, so do reach out with your suggestions via Facebook, Instagram or X, formerly known, of course, as Twitter. So until the next show, bye for now.